Many of you know that last August, around my birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. 10 tumors in my left breast. Some of you may not know. Now you know. For the sake of my own individual life, I had to get there and say, no, I will not allow this anymore. And it saved my life. I believe that was the moment in that living room with that Joe and this fierceness that we are talking about today. For the sake of my life, I believe that this is a moment in the sake of our country. It's been long enough, and it's a matter of life and death. Black lives matter.
Yeah. Someday we'll all be free. I don't know about you, but if we think about getting freedom in our own lives, it has not always, in my own personal life, been an easy road, has it? Sometimes it's challenging to release our old ideas, our old fears, our old thoughts, our old ways of being, and discover our freedom. And this is not only true for us individually, it's true for us collectively. And so today we're continuing on with our conversation, Will the Real Us Stand Up? And really inviting us to think about what is the daring that is being called for us individually and collectively. And it seems especially appropriate to talk about on Father's Day. Father's Day. Not only do we celebrate the dads in the room, which we'll do in a little bit, and acknowledge how important that is, but there is a profound masculine energy that is so important that we bring, that our dads bring, that our men bring. And for those of us who are not men on the outside, we have that same possibility for masculine energy within us. All of us, male and female, we have the masculine and feminine energies. And when we bring that masculine energy forward, I love to think of it as the spiritual warrior. That bold and daring and fierce way that we engage in life. We come to identify masculine strength, however, particularly sometimes in our own spirituality, as overly aggressive. We don't always like it. We don't always like it when people are bold and daring, assertive, powerful. We have a great, what shall we say? We place a great value on connection, on nurturing, gentleness, softness, and being with each other. And yet we know from the ancient Chinese yin-yang symbol that these two sides are equally important to the expression of life as a whole. The yin-yang, the female, the male, night and day, strong and soft. And so often what happens is we see these two and we think of them as in opposition. The night, the darkness overcomes the day, and then the light has to fight back. And so much of our popular mythology is really about the battle between good and evil, light and dark. And yet the reality of it is that from a deeper understanding, a spiritual understanding, we recognize that these are complements of each other. They're complementary to the experience of life itself. You see, it is in this complement. I almost said complementation, and I think I just made up a word. I don't think that's actually a word. In their complementary nature. It is in the complementary nature of these two that we have the multiplicity of life. You see, in spirit itself, spirit is one. It's one. That's all that's happening. It's the isness of life. And there is only the one. And yet when you see creation, you see multiplicity. You see all of us. and all of creation and all of the stars and the planets and all the different things. And that comes out of the one moving into creation through this complementary nature of something and nothing. Black and white, masculine, feminine, yin and yang. So as we think about this masculine energy, this is the complement to the receptive energy of the yin, the spiritual energy. We have yes and no, active and receptive, strong and connected. Two sides of the same coin. But we're not always comfortable with that, are we? We don't always want to be strong and powerful. We have such a high value on nurturing and connection and love and seeing everybody and accepting everybody. We see this beautifully represented in Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin is one of my favorite representations of the divine. And she is considered the female Buddha. And she is attributed with this deep and profound compassion. And this is a very common representation of Kuan Yin, and a great deal of beauty and softness. And you can see she's holding something that's growing in the lotus. And it's just, and it's a lovely, embracing image of compassion. But this is not the only way that Kuan Yin reveals herself. Kuan Yin also comes with a sword. Kuan Yin's sword is called the sword of fierce compassion. It is the sword that cuts away the falseness. It is the sword that cuts away illusion. It is the sword that cuts away old ideas that stand between you and the divine. And she has such compassion for the human experience that she is unwilling to be fooled by the illusion. And she has such love for the light and life that each and every one of us is, that she pulls out her sword of compassion and says, that is not the truth about you. That is an illusion. That is a falsehood. Which image do you like better? It's not hard to see, right? So often, so much of us, we tend toward this very soft idea of compassion. This is the place where we listen and connect and nurture, and it is important. And yet, there's another way that compassion shows up. This fierce compassion. This willingness to have the strength not only to sit in empathy with someone's pain. Compassion means to breathe with. So to walk with someone in their pain is a profound act of love. Not to need to fix it, not to jump in the hole with them, but to simply be that container and to stand there in our own discomfort with their uncomfortableness. That is a profound place of compassion. And yet it is equally as compassionate to say, I know the truth of who you are, and I will not be fooled by your false belief about yourself. I will not be fooled by a story or an idea that is anything other than the spiritual truth. I found this wonderful article, and it was an article on the Kuan Yin's fierce compassion. And Jack Kornfield was quoted in this article. I'm going to read you the whole quote. Compassion is not foolish. It does not just go along with what others want so they don't feel bad. There is a yes in compassion. It's the compassion of, yes, I see that you're in pain. Yes, I will sit here with you. Yes, I will be with you as long as you need. Yes, I understand to the best of my ability. But there is also a no. A no said with the same courage of heart. No to abuse, no to violence, both personal and worldwide. The no is said not out of hate, but out of unwavering care. It is the powerful no of leaving a destructive family and the agonizing no of allowing an addict to experience the consequence of his or her actions. It is the no that is not done out of anger or hatred toward someone who is behaving out of a false idea, but it is the no to the false idea. And it is done, it is said, for out of unwavering care for those who are not able to say no for themselves, or for whom the no is not being heard. This is fierce compassion, a fierce willingness to see the truth, to speak the truth. And it's interesting to me how uncomfortable we are with saying no. How uncomfortable we are because we're so steeped in connecting, finding common ground, seeing eye to eye. But do you see, that's the yes of compassion. That's soul to soul, heart to heart. That's not what we're saying no to. This universal no, Carlyle speaks of, the no to the universe that says this is not the spiritual truth. Emma Curtis Hopkins talks about this as the profound denial that makes room for the affirmation. It's not the denial of spirit, it is the denial that this falsehood has any reality in spiritual truth. That's a strong and powerful place, isn't it? So we're talking about this on Father's Day. And, it's always a bit of an issue when we come to Mother's Day and Father's Day, and we want to honor the dads and speak about, fatherhood and all of that good stuff. And I'm thinking not everybody in the room or everybody watching this had the ideal father. We didn't all have the ideal father, did we? I didn't have the ideal father. We might not have had the ideal mother when we come to Mother's Day. Yeah, and yet there is an ideal that we have about that masculine strength. And if we are fortunate, it is our father, or it is someone in our life. My father was not the ideal father. He would rage at the drop of a hat, and often for completely unforeseen reasons. When my parents were getting divorced, I was in 6th grade, and I had a teacher. He wasn't actually even the teacher for my primary classroom. We only changed for reading and math, and he was my reading teacher, Mr. Herman. And when somebody asks me, the teacher that I most respect, it's always Mr. Herman. And he saw something in me at the beginning of the year in 6th grade, and he began to reach out to me. I wasn't the only one he took under his wing, but I was one of them. I wasn't even in his class, and he took me on every field trip that his class took. And when we were in reading class or other classes, I was always the one sitting in the front marking all of his test grades and helping him out because he saw something in me, and he knew that I needed somebody to say, do that. You can do that. Go do that. You need to be doing that. You should do that. Do you see? Not in a pejorative way, not, oh, you should be this for the rest of your life, but that strong, masculine, I see you. I see you and I know what you need in this moment, and I'm going to be here to give it to you and help you. And he was not the most warm and fuzzy person you would ever want to meet. And the sixth graders, we flocked to him. You see? He was teaching us discipline. That's what he was teaching us. Not punishment. Punishment is what I got at home. He was teaching us discipline. And ooh, we don't like that word, do we? We want to be free and do whatever we feel like and have a nice life and all of that good stuff, don't we? And yet, it is the discipline that allows us to have the very freedom that Lahoma so beautifully sung to us about. The discipline to say no to that third piece of cheesecake. The discipline to say, no, I'm not going to sleep in. I'm actually going to go to the gym because I'm taking care of myself. The discipline to say, no, actually, I'm not going to just shoot my mouth off. I'm going to have discipline of pen and tongue, and I'm going to think about what I'm going to say first. The discipline of not pushing the send button on that email that you just wrote. Let me think about that for 24 hours before I actually respond. Do you see? This is the discipline. The discipline of no. And it's a profoundly loving place. And it's a profoundly important thing that we need to learn. We struggle to discipline ourselves and to find that place where we say no with strength and power. So in Father's Day, we always like to bring forward men who seem to exemplify what we're talking about. And, we want to have some wonderful conversation. We've already said we don't necessarily have all the ideal fathers, and we have to deal with that. And so we want to talk about, in the context also of our conversation this month, will the real us stand up? I was really moved to want to talk a little bit about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And I know it's absurd, a white woman talking about Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, but I'm going to do it anyway, so there you go. So I was really inspired by a Facebook post. This was a number of weeks ago in response to all of the things that we keep seeing over and over and over again in the news. Black lives being lost, people being shot in churches, being shot by police officers, children being manhandled by police officers, black girls, black boys. And this post came along, and what I remember from this post was how interesting that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X are always brought up as opposites. Martin Luther King, the loving, nonviolent one. Malcolm X, maybe a little too powerful. And we can say that Martin Luther King, well, really, that nonviolent stuff doesn't really work. It's just weakness. Or we can say, Malcolm X, yeah, that power, that is way too aggressive. And for the black community might say that for some reason, for one reason, and the white community, we might say that for another reason. And yet these two are held up as opposites. What if both, in fact, are strong? What if both, in fact, are part of this yin-yang of the way in which we show up in the world? We could do the same thing with Gandhi, who brought independence to India through nonviolence, through the practice of ahimsa, an extraordinary event, an extraordinary thing that we see and we hold up as, wow, that is amazing. We can look at the independence of the United States. A number of people who got together, just like Gandhi, and said no to tyranny and no to outrageous taxes and no to the way in which, to religious intolerance and no and no and no. And they brought about independence here in the United States through war. I don't know that war is always necessary or ever necessary. And yet in both cases, independence was achieved and nations, well, in our case, a nation was born. In the case of India, a nation was freed to go back to be itself. Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? Is there a better way? I would submit to you that all ways are needed. The need to be compassionate and loving and connected and extended, and the need to be compassionate and strong and powerful and say, this is not okay, or this is what I choose. This is what I say yes to because that is what I've said no to. The ultimate measure of a man is not whether he stands in moments of comfort or convenience, is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Isn't that true in our own lives? When we're struggling with things that make us uncomfortable, we're struggling with our own controversies. Do I tell the truth to my family? Do I pursue this business? Do I go out in the world and be who I am and shine my light? Or do I accommodate and appease and people please? Or do I just constantly seek common ground and never shine my own light? This is the question we're asking all month. How do we translate these very skills that we have learned in our own lives to the collective consciousness that says it is uncomfortable to talk about race. It is uncomfortable to talk about some of the hidden false beliefs that we're still carrying around for hundreds of years in our own country. It is uncomfortable and it is controversial. And so we don't want to make waves. We don't want to make religious waves. We don't want to offend anybody, so we don't speak about our own faith tradition, and we don't want to make waves with anybody else. And so we simply let the conversation slide by. There is a place of compassion that is fierce and strong. There's a place for our spirituality that allows us to stand as spiritual warriors for what we are going to stand for. Malcolm X says this: nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. How does that land? Makes some of us a little uncomfortable, doesn't it? We don't take anything. We allow it. We accept it. We receive it from Spirit. What if we're wrong and we don't really know, so we're just going to accept whatever God's will is? But do you see, we have it confused. We think taking it means I'm taking it from someone, don't we? We think if I take it, that means I'm taking it from you and you have less. This is not the taking at all. Ernest Holmes says this. I'm sorry you can't see this quote as well as I'd hoped. Ernest Holmes says this: the Spirit can only give us what we can take. This taking is mental. Spirit can only do for us what it can do through us. Do you see, it's not a taking from, it's a taking up. Do I take my stand in my own life as a prosperous being? Do I take up the consciousness of healthy relationships? Do I take a sense of empowerment as a woman? Do I take my place in my own life? This is why we study Ralph Waldo Emerson in Roots, in our Roots class. Am I willing to be myself and take the place that my Constitution gives me in my own life? And are we willing to take that collective place to take the place in consciousness, the place of equality and justice, the place that says, I take this place that says, I know each and every person is a divine manifestation of the one life, and that every way in which each and every person shows up is a part of the expression of the whole, is a part of the multiplicity that spirit needs to be all of itself. Am I willing to take that place? Am I willing to hold that in my consciousness? Do you see? We're not talking about taking something from someone else, and we're not talking about saying no to a human being. We don't say no to human beings. No, you're wrong, bad, horrible person. But we say no to things in our lives, don't we? And our fathers, that ideal father, has taught us how to say no to injustice, how to say no to racism, how to say no to discrimination of all kinds, how to say no to war, to hatred, how to say no to these things. Do you see? These are all behaviors. These are all conditions in the human experience, just as we say no to any human condition in our own life that we do not accept as spiritually true. So we take a place, we take it up. Do you see? We don't take it from, we take it up so that we have a place to stand. So we've been really having an amazing conversation on Wednesday nights, and as we've been going deeper into Marianne Williamson's book, Healing the Soul of America, talking about these, it's been just really so heart-connecting and so deep and rich. And so Tracy and I were doing the Wednesday series last night, and she came up with a little by-play, little exercise thing that we did, and it was absolutely fascinating to see how it played out. So Karen and I we're gonna do this for you. We're gonna play this out a little bit for you, and I'm just gonna invite you to just notice, and notice where it lands with you, and notice where you go with it.
Hey, Petra, how you doing?
Hey, Karen.
You know, I love your outfit. That's a nice color scheme, and it goes really well with your black hair. I love your black hair.
No, I don't have black hair. It's blonde.
No, you have black hair, and you recently got a cut, and it really highlights the blackness of your hair. I really like your black hair. You have black hair.
No, it's not black, actually. It's blonde, and I actually really like my blonde hair. I've been blonde my whole life.
It's black. I'm sort of here to tell you it's black, but whatever. You've got black hair.
Okay, I do admit that some of it comes from a bottle, but it has actually been blonde my entire life. No, I don't actually have black hair.
All right, well, we just won't go further into that, but I do have another thing. I was, a couple of weeks ago, I was checking out your bio, wanting to get it up on a new website, all that good stuff, and I saw that you came from Hawaii. So I've been to Hawaii, one of the islands. Which island do you come from?
Well, no, I don't come from Hawaii. I actually was born and raised in Philadelphia.
No, the bio, I read it. It was black and white on the paper. I read that you come from Hawaii. I know you come from Hawaii. It said so.
You know, I'm not actually sure what bio you were reading, but actually, I was born and raised in Philadelphia.
Okay, well, I saw Hawaii, so I'm sure it was really good for you when you grew up in Hawaii. So we'll just have to talk about this more later.
What do you notice? What do you notice? What do you feel in your body? Tell me what you notice. Tension? Frustration. Who's frustrated? Both? Did you feel frustration from me? I certainly did not feel frustration in my body. Okay? Frustration in her. Great. Okay, what else? What else did you observe? Say that again? Fear? Okay, fear on whose part?
The calmness that you had in delivery.
Okay, good, thank you.
I felt fear for you, that you would be knocked off of your truth.
You felt fear for me. Good, okay. Clarity. Stubbornness. Okay, so let's talk about that. What's so interesting what came up. So first of all, one of the things that somebody said was, well, I just saw that you were both right. I don't see how that's possible because I actually have blonde hair. We have a great deal of trouble in our spirituality saying, no, that's wrong, because we think that there's something wrong with saying that's wrong. We believe that good and bad are only products of our own thinking, and that's actually true, but that doesn't mean we can't label something bad. What we don't say is that there's an evil force behind it. We don't say there's an outside force behind it, but we can actually say, no, you are incorrect. My hair is blonde. And they aren't the same thing, what's being said. And so think about all the things that have been said about you and how you take it up. Things that labels or definitions or descriptions, whether it is about you being black or Hispanic or gay or old or young, or now it's, those white men, what do they know? It doesn't matter who you are. Somebody has said something because that's what they understand to be and believe to be true. And yet, I was neither frustrated nor did I have fear, because I know who I am. And your saying something different doesn't make it so. That is taking up my place in the world. Do you see? When I am willing to stand in my own truth, I didn't need to make Karen wrong. I didn't have to call her names and, say, oh, you stupid idiot, and who wrote that bio anyway, and I can't believe those things people are saying about me, and I didn't have to do any of those things because I know the truth of who I am. And that's the place of power. Now, the other thing that came up was stubbornness. Because we actually had the group do this. After Tracy and I did this, we had the group do it. Just do it for each other. And of course, they laughed and had lots of fun and said really silly things. And then somebody said, I felt stubborn saying, no, my hair is blonde. As if it weren't okay. As if somehow I should acquiesce because I don't want to make her mad. And so I'm going to say, well, what? I guess my hair is black? And yet, how often do we do that? Because we think there's something stubborn about insisting on the spiritual truth. Quite frankly, I think it's because we weren't allowed to say no as kids. I think we were told we were willful and stubborn and you better, by God, listen to what I'm telling you, and you go sit down, and you don't do that. And we were not allowed to say no as children. And we are uncomfortable with saying no today. So if I can stand in this truth, I learn that this is what I say, the quality of our no equals the strength of our yes. The no is actually carving out the place for the affirmation. If I can stand in this truth about justice, no, it's not okay for you to treat people unequally. It's not okay for you to go into somebody's church and shoot 9 people because they're black. No, you can't do that. You see, I am standing in that space that I take up. I am taking up that space. And this is the strength that comes from that no. It gives us a place to stand.
So I want to share with each of you a moment in my life where I had to, one, learn and then actually do a universal no, what Peter's been talking about. Many of you know that last August, around my birthday, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. 10 tumors in my left breast. Some of you may not know. Now you know. Well, I went through various things, the first being that I had to really understand that the consciousness that created that was not the consciousness that I had in that moment of the diagnosis. That was the first key for me. One of the big keys along my journey in becoming cancer-free is Petra, at some point, you know, a week or two into this, it wasn't long because it went so fast, she asked me a question. She said, have you, brought that warrior out and got the universal no? And I had to ask, well, tell me a little bit more about that. And it's just like she mentioned, the 21JUN sword, that sword that cuts through this. So I want to share with you, I never fought cancer. Never fought it. Never pushed against it. You know, just didn't do any of that. But there was a day where I took up my universal no in my living room. And boy, did I take it up. I have, some of you may know, in Aikido, there's like a jo. It's a stick. And I actually got my jo out, planted it in my living room. I would do it here, but I was afraid I'd hit the podium. And so I took this jo in the living room, and I took a stand. I took a stand like I had never took before. And it was a no. No, this is not how my life is going to be. No, this is not the reality of me. No, I do not accept what's being said or what anyone is attempting to put on me, that cancer and all that we can get wrapped up in this country about cancer. And I took that stand, and it was like, no, I will not allow this to be the truth of who I am and moving forward. Feel it? It's here with me right now. But it was that no. There was no fighting against it. It was just merely me, for the sake of my own life, saying, this is not what's going to happen anymore. Didn't matter how long it lasted in my body. It was no. And that made way for the yes, of yes, I'll have surgery, and that's it. I'm done. And that is what outpictured. I am totally cancer-free. I don't even think about it. I don't talk about it. I've never said that I'm a survivor. You won't hear that. I'm a thriver. So there's difference in how we take things up, and there are moments in our lives that are literally life and death. And if nothing else, I want you to get this. Be in my body right now. Feel the energy of my body. It's not anger. It's that no more. No more. For the sake of my own individual life, I had to get there and say, no, I will not allow this anymore. And it saved my life. I believe that was the moment in that living room with that jo, and this fierceness that we are talking about today. For the sake of my life, I believe that this is a moment in the sake of our country. It's been long enough, and it's a matter of life and death. Life and death. I want you to feel that. And it's time for that universal no. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. Black lives matter. So that one more person doesn't have to die. And I'm going to be bold and daring together. We've been talking about boldness, and it is time for every Caucasian in this country to get this, that we will not allow this to occur anymore. No. Because in a lot of regards, it's up to us to take this stand and say no. And as Peter said earlier, no one's taking from anyone. We're merely taking a stand.
So, inviting you to just notice for a moment, how many of you felt Karen's energy as anger? That's a dysfunctional, historical place that we have in our psyche, whether it's from our family or our country, that passion equals anger, and that a willingness to plant a stake in the ground is angry. This is Carlyle, he's a romantic poet. He calls it the universal no. Emma Curtis Hopkins calls it the no that makes room for the affirmation. It is the no to the falsehood. It is the no to the unreality that anyone should be treated different because of the way they look on the outside. Because the truth is, while we're all connected on the inside, we're all one. We're all part of that oneness. Our lives are all connected as that one infinite reality. The truth is, there are not just roses in our garden, are there? There are roses and irises and daffodils and wisteria and pansies and columbine, and we could go on and on and on. Why? Because the infinite reality of the divine itself requires an unmeasurable amount of flowers to express the fullness of its flowerness. Yes? And how much more true that is in the self-awareness of the spiritual being having the human experience. That the infinite reality of the oneness requires this extraordinary multiplicity so that every bit of itself can be expressed as each and every one of us as individuals, perfectly unique and precious and different. Thank God. And different. And so in the celebration of diversity, we can say no to spiritual immaturity that says, oh, well, we're all one. We don't have to talk about that. We don't talk about our differences. We're all one. Yes, yes, we are all one. Yes. And we're living in the multiplicity of creation. So we've all shown up differently. Isn't that something to be celebrated? And so this no, do you see, this no is not a pushing you are wrong and bad and horrible. This no is a no, here I take my stand. From this I shall not be moved. In this truth, I don't care what I read in the newspaper. I don't care what anybody else says. I don't care what names I'm called or anybody else is called or any of those things. Because why? I know the truth. And when we know the truth, the spiritual truth, mind you, not our opinionated truth. This universal no, particularly in a collective setting, requires a great deal of maturity. This is not a political statement, nor is it a statement about my opinion. Oh, I like these people, but I don't like those people. It takes a great deal of self-reflection to find that true north, that place to stand. But then, as Karen found in her own personal life, do you see that from that place we cannot be moved because it's true. And in that moment, we have all the strength we need to discipline ourselves, to speak boldly, to act in a way that's appropriate. So what is ours to do? If we're going to dare greatly together, what is ours to do? Some of us may be more motivated to action in the world. I tend to fall a little more on that side. I love to pray, but I love to speak and act. And my speaking and acting will always be grounded in my spiritual truth, and my spiritual reality will always be for something and never against anything. Some of us may be more motivated to spiritual treatment, to prayer, to spiritual mind treatment and prayer, to envision a world that works for everyone, to seek that place of common ground and nonviolence. These are not in opposition to each other. Do you see? We need them both. They're both equally as important. And again, we can see them as complements in moving our healing forward. Just as we have to nurture our bodies and say no to the things that are not good for us, and in that we transform our health, we have the same ability and opportunity. Last month we dared greatly in our own lives. This month we're moving into daring together in our collective lives.
So we've been talking about masculine energy of strength and purposefulness and focus. And so we want to honor all the fathers in this moment in our lives. So if you are a father, if you are a father figure, if you're a dad, a papa, whatever, we invite you to stand.
Please stand.
Please
Let us
stand.
acknowledge you.
The greeters, we please stay standing. We thank you for the strength and courage that you bring to be a father. And as the greeters are giving the fathers a gift, we want to share on the card, for those of us who aren't getting them, 2 quotes. "A man who stands for nothing will fall for anything," by Malcolm X. So we want to thank you, men in our lives, fathers in our lives, for taking a stand for all that you stand for the sake of the goodness of our own individual and collective lives. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King says, "I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear."
Yes.
Thank you, fathers, for bringing your love, your fierce love, along with your gentle love, because we need them both.
Yes.
For being willing to take a stand for the positive unfolding of the lives that you have touched. Thank you very much.
And for being a profound recognition that the masculine energetic is alive and well and adding to our spiritual forward movement.
So as we move into treatment, we as a community, some of us did this on Friday night at a prayer vigil, but we want to acknowledge that, yes, last Wednesday night at Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina, 9 precious lives were lost. At a Bible study where they openly, wholeheartedly welcomed someone into their circle. And at the end of that Bible study, there was hatred or something within this person and decided to take these lives. Black lives matter. And so we want to read the names. I'm going to read the names of each of these 9 individuals as Reverend Vince lights a candle for each of them. So I invite you to bring these people and their families and our entire country and each other into our hearts. We especially remember Reverend Samantha Pinky, age 41. Cynthia Hurd, age 54. Sharonda Coleman Singleton, age 45. Tiwanza Sanders, age 26. Mira Thompson, age 59, Ethel Lee Lance, age 70. Susie Jackson, age 87. Daniel L. Simmons, age 74. And DePayne Middleton Doctor, age 49. Our hearts are with you. We know that you have led the way to ensure that as we have lit your lives in a candle of light, that may this be the last time a candle is lit for such a purpose.
Yeah.
And so, I invite us to turn to prayer. And if you feel so moved, you're welcome to stand with the three of us, the ministers of our community. It is in this moment, in this precious moment, as we stand and sit as a community, that we recognize and we know that there is one life, there is one power, and there is one presence. It matters not what we choose to call it, this thing that is seen and unseen, this presence that is omniscient and omnipotent and omnipresent. It is this life force, this creative force that so unabashedly gives to itself so freely, so fully, that it never stands against itself, because there's only one thing happening, and that is God, that is life, that is love, that is spirit, that is freedom, that is joy, that is abundance, that is wholeness, that is compassion and forgiveness. And so it is in this recognition that I absolutely know that I am that I am. And I invite you to know this with me, to bring it into your voice and say, I am that I am. For as we each, as these individualized expressions of the one, take ourselves up so completely, we take each other up to a new awakening of humanity. And so by the power and the authority of this one mind, the Christ consciousness, that which is, that which always has been, and that which always shall be, I speak a word for this country, the United States of America. This great country in which we know ourselves to be. I speak a word absolutely declaring that Black Lives Matter. That every single person within this country matters. And that whatever is in our bodies that cannot fully embrace that every single precious life matters, it is sent back into the nothingness for which it came. For each of us are an individualized expression of the one.
And so we say no to racism. We say no to injustice. We say no to inequality. We say no to any false idea about any human being being less than or not a part of the one. We say the universal no to these falsehoods, and we cut them out of our collective psyche. We cut the falsehood and the illusion of separation out of our consciousness, that we make room for the yes that we affirm together.
And so, knowing that as the word is spoken, we are grateful for the manifestation of these words. We know that this is so. A new humanity rising has been birthed in this moment. And the hearts and the minds and the cells and the consciousness of this body, of this community. We take a stand as a community. We are the portal. We are the place where everyone is welcome. Everyone is seen. For we are all individualized expression of the one in its beautiful uniqueness. We celebrate it as we release it and let it be. And so it is.
So it is.